I was fortunate enough to never get a major injury myself. It was clear how frustrated my teammates were with having to sit the bench while their team played the sports they loved. This led me to take sports medicine 1 and 2, which got me more and more interested in injuries and how to prevent and treat them. This summer, right before flying back to the academy to start the field hockey preseason, I broke my arm. This led me to have to stay in Germany for about a week longer and get surgery on my arm. I had to go through the same thing I had always dreaded and sit out for 6 weeks, which was more than half the season. Although this might seem like a lot, I was still very fortunate. I learned how terrible it feels to be unable to support my teammates on the field. When thinking about what I wanted to focus my capstone on, I realized that I didn't want anyone to have to go through the same thing I had to go through. So I decided to create a video focusing on the best ways to prevent injuries as my capstone project. I want this video to be a resource for all athletes to access and to provide them with strategies that they can use to prevent injuries. My ultimate goal with this video would be to educate as many people as possible and reduce the numbers of injuries at the academy to a minimum so that athletes can stay healthy and participate in the program. I've decided on 7 different areas of focus for this video that I will be discussing throughout the course of this presentation. These areas include background, warm-up, cool-down, preseason, protective equipment, hydration, and nutrition. Starting the video with background information, I was hoping to capture the viewer's attention and establish relevance. Evidence shows that the prevention of injuries in high school sports is important because they account for an estimated 2 million injuries, 500,000 doctor visits, and 30,000 hospitalizations annually, as stated by an article by Comstock et al. In the Morbidity and Mortality Report. This causes the athlete to miss valuable practice time, which is the worst case scenario if one is trying to improve in their sport or passion. This graph shows just how much practice the individual sports miss on average after an injury, which could be decreased significantly if athletes knew more about injury prevention. In an article published in the Orthop J Sports Med Journal, Pizarro claims that the most common injuries are sprains, strains, and concussions. These injuries can be prevented if the right injury prevention strategies are addressed. One of these strategies, and also my next area of focus, is performing a well-planned, effective warm-up before every workout session or practice. A review of studies published in the International Journal of Environmental Research and Public Health shows that the pooled estimate for injury risk reduction through an effective warm-up was about 36%, or 30% for adjusted bias. Usual findings for an effective warm-up include running exercises at slow speed. These will raise an athlete's heart rate, which increases blood flow and widens blood vessels, which helps increase VO2 max, the peak amount of oxygen your body can utilize during exercise, as well as helping minimize stress on the heart. Active stretching. Malik and McHugh found that stretching before activity is proven to help prevent muscle strains. This is because joints have freer movement patterns, which allows for greater relative force at longer muscle length. This enhanced ability to resist excessive elongation of a muscle may decrease the likelihood of a muscle strain. Controlled contact. This prepares the body for the work that it is expected to do next. A different set of exercises. A study performed by Thierry Soligard, who is a Master of Science degree from the Department of Sports Medicine, found that a different set of exercises, including strength, balance, jumping exercises, and Nordic hamstring exercises, can also be beneficent in preventing injuries. This activates muscles and teaches athletes proper movement patterns, like balance or jumping, in a controlled environment before executing them in high-stress situations, like games. Speed running, combined with sport-specific movements with sudden changes in direction, allow for a seamless transition between warm-up and training. The cool-down is just as critical as the warm-up, as claimed by the American Heart Association. Since heartbeat and body temperature are raised and blood vessels are widened, stopping too fast can make one feel sick or even pass out. A good cool-down contains some slow running to slowly relax the heart rate and some effective stretching. The American Heart Association recommends holding each stretch for 10 to 30 seconds with a strong but not painful stretch. They also urge not to bounce. This stretching will help limbs, muscles, and joints relax and can help reduce lactic acid buildup, which could lead to muscle cramping and stiffness. Other than right before activity, It is also important to prepare the body long-term and before the season starts. This can be done through conditioning, strength training, and flexibility training. Resistance, or strength training, is a crucial part of injury prevention and performance enhancement. According to Jeff Young, increasing the strength of muscles and secondary soft tissue increases the capacity of musculoskeletal system and tolerate various and increasing forces and loads, thereby significantly decreasing the chance of injury. Young also suggests that because most sports consist of having bursts of fast or explosive movements followed by rest or reduced intensity, high-intensity interval training, sprint interval training, or some other form of metabolic conditioning should be included in an athlete's exercise program. However, one needs to be aware that high frequency combined with high intensity can quickly lead to burnout. It is important to stay within the appropriate heart rate training zone. This can be calculated by subtracting the athlete's age from 220 and working at 70 to 90% of that. Young defines flexibility as the available range of motion each joint, and mobility, the amount of usable range of motion in dynamic loaded conditions, are important components of both movement and injury prevention. When movement is restricted, maximal or near maximal lengthening of the muscle surrounding the joint will occur earlier in the movement. If this happens under a load, injury may occur. If an athlete has full range of motion, it is recommended to stretch twice a week to maintain range of motion. The more tightness or movement restriction, the more stretching sessions should be performed. The right protective equipment can help athletes stay safe when playing sports or being active. The book, Sports Injury Information for Teens by Kevin Hayes, gives information on this topic. They explain how equipment should be in good condition, fit appropriately, and be worn correctly at all times. One of the most important equipment pieces are helmets. Helmets can reduce the risk of severe head injury, like skull fracture or severe brain injury, and even save lives by absorbing impact energy. All helmets should have approval from the Snell Memorial Foundation and the National Operating Committee on Standards for Athletic Equipment. Another important part of equipment is eye protection. Eye injuries are the leading cause of blindness in children in the United States, with most of these injuries happening in sports. The right protective eyewear can prevent 9 out of 10 sports-related eye injuries. Types of protective eye equipment include safety goggles and face guards. Mouth guards protect the mouth, teeth, and tongue. They are often recommended or required in soccer, lacrosse, baseball, softball, cheerleading, field hockey, ice hockey, and football. Pads for wrists, knees, and elbows can help prevent lots of injuries, including broken bones. They're important for inline skating, volleyball, ice hockey, football, baseball, and lacrosse. Some sports require shin guards, like soccer or field hockey. One last external factor to prevent injuries can be bracing and taping. Hayes defines bracing and taping are methods that provide support to muscles, tendons, and ligaments and prevent injuries such as sprains, strains, and fractures. The difference between bracing and taping is that braces are reusable pieces of polymer or metal that can be adjusted during practice and are used to enhance mobility rather than immobilizing, while athletic tape is self-adhesive and used to limit excessive movement of ligaments and joints. Taping should always be performed by a professional, since incorrect techniques might higher injury risk. The downside of taping, however, is that the binding power of the tape lessens through movement and sweat, and the endurance of the tape will last no longer than 30 minutes. Hydration is an important health factor for everyone, but especially for athletes and people working at high physical activity. Barry Popkin, who works at the Department of Nutrition for the University of North Carolina, explains that 2 main areas are impacted by dehydration: physical and cognitive. Physical aspects caused by dehydration can often be seen, especially in athletes working at high intensity or heat. Slight dehydration might cause reduced endurance, altered thermoregulatory capacity, reduced motivation, or increased perceived effort. Another common symptom of dehydration is a headache, which can usually be relieved between 30 minutes and 3 hours after rehydrating. The cognitive aspects of dehydration can include fatigue, confusion, anger, and vigor. These symptoms can indirectly lead to more serious injuries. Dehydration, however, also impacts cushions of joints, flexibility, and speed. In an interview with Johns Hopkins Medicine, Raven Naran, a nutrition and dietetic professional, explains that because athletes can lose up to 3 quarts of fluid for every hour of activity, it is important to replenish not just our water supply, but also salts, dust, and sweat. The most important electrolyte for sports is salt, since it helps nerves transmit electrical signals to the muscles of the body, including the heart, and helps the body absorb nutrients into its cells. According to Rebecca Alcock, nutrition plays a critical role in injury prevention by supporting the development of strong, resilient tissues, therefore helping to reduce both acute and overuse injuries. Throughout adolescence, adequate energy is required to meet the growth and development needs of the individual, in addition to demands from physical activity, practice, and competition. Aside from caloric needs, it is also important to reach macronutrient goals. This includes proteins to support muscle growth and stabilization, carbohydrates to refuel energy and fat soluble vitamins, and essential fatty acids that support growth and maturation. Important micronutrients include calcium for skeletal development, vitamin D, which influences calcium regulation and impacts the muscle and immune systems, and zinc, which forms a component of various enzymes. Before I started to record my film, I laid out what order I wanted the areas in and wrote a script for my video. In this script, I explained every area in detail, as well as giving reasoning why each of these steps is important, and in detail how they're used to prevent injuries. Next, I attended multiple sports practices and interviewed a few players on previous injuries with questions like, have you ever had an injury due to high school athletic? How did that make you feel? What did you learn from being injured? And why is it important to you to stay healthy and uninjured? The answers to these questions gave material to edit an intro to the video that shows why preventing injuries is so important from an athlete's perspective. Then I planned the visuals that I wanted to have in the video to make it more engaging and educational. Now that I have the structure and script for my video and visuals planned, I will start recording film and audio. My goal is to finish recording all the material I need by Christmas break so that I can continue editing over break and next semester. Since my ultimate goal for this video is for it to be a resource for all athletes, I have talked to Mr. Engel, and we decided that it would be beneficial to present the video at the next Meet the Coaches and potentially share it with coaches in particular. This way, many people can be made aware of the need for injury prevention and get access to the video. This will also be my new personal deadline to finish the editing process. I want to thank Mr. Despens, Mr. Shea, and Ms. Drew for supporting and helping me throughout my process. And these are my resources. Thank you. Yeah. I would say for example, the how did it make you feel question, I had a lot of injuries, useless, like unnecessary. I felt uncomfortable. I didn't want to sit on the bench. Like I would rather not be on the team than just be injured. And just like people feeling really bad, which also like increased my motivation to work on this video and to help athletes not feel this way. Yeah. I would say the hardest part of my process was to just find information that I wanted to include in the video, since this is such a broad topic that has so many areas and so much focus, that I really needed to pick out the really important information that I wanted people to know, because I also didn't want to focus on one specific sport or one specific injury, because I wanted for it to be as broad as possible and for as many people as possible. Yeah. Thank you. It's definitely a really important topic, and I was debating whether I should include it or not. And I ended up not including it just because of time purpose, and like I didn't want the video to be 30 minutes long because that would also be boring. But I have found multiple studies that focus especially on recovery and also on mental aspects of practice or competition, where sleep is really important to help benefit with that. Thank you.